We have a crime problem. I wish the rise that we're seeing in crime in America today were some sort of aberration or a blip. My best judgment, having been involved in criminal law enforcement for many years, is that this is a dangerous, permanent trend. We will.
Best judgment, the same guy whose best judgment led to him being the first senator to endorse Trump, let alone all kinds of other evidence we've seen since he's become more nationally prominent in the last several months, indicating he doesn't have great judgment, but a permanent rise based on what is truly a blip, as you'll see in the course of this video, without supporting it with further evidence of what analysis may indicate that we are at the outset of a permanent rise. So what other reason, like if you assume that maybe there aren't great statistical indicators and ultimately one would conclude it is a blip, what other reasons are there to voice this kind of thing, to indicate that an incoming administration is going to have to cope with a mucky crime battle? What may there be for whom to gain from it? Let's keep watching, please.
Deploy the talents and abilities of the Department of Justice in the most effective way possible to confront this rise in crime.
Jefferson Beauregard Sessions became the nation's 84th Attorney General on Thursday and immediately joined in on the Trump fear-mongering about America, falsely claiming that violent crime is rising. It's not. Sessions will lead more than 113,000 Department of Justice employees and launch what Donald Trump calls, quote, a new era of justice that emphasizes law and order. But what about voting rights? Something that's also on the DOJ portfolio. Joining me now is investigative reporter Greg Pallas and Judith Brown-Dianis, executive director of the Advancement Project. Thank you both for being here. I want to just quickly touch on the crime piece before we move on to voting rights, since that's where we open. So, Judith, this idea that crime is on the rise, not true. The murder rate is
there's your blip.
It's been in 47
that Sessions thinks
years.
Is a permanent rise.
That's the direction that
the very right end of that line.
And crime overall is down in part because the economy is pretty good.
There's other blips along the way you may notice, by the way.
Fear-mongering by the Trump White House, insisting that the country is in constant crime turmoil and that there's terrorism around every corner. What do you think they're trying to do?
Yeah, Joy, this is dangerous alternative facts that are being presented, and this is really about making a stronger police state that bears down on communities of color, Muslim people, LGBTQ communities, that what we should expect out of this Department of Justice is an attorney general who really does step up to make sure that law enforcement has more money, that people who are protesting get prosecuted, that dissent is squelched, but that also that communities of color will be feeling the law and order. While white communities get protect and serve, black and brown communities will be under attack. I mean, this is going to be terror on our communities. And unfortunately, they're relying on these false facts. And for him to say that this is a permanent trend, this is the same language that led to the war on drugs. So we need to understand increased incarceration rates, and we also know that at the end of the day, there's a private prison industry waiting to actually cage people that are victims of this new war on drugs.
And Greg, the other half of what Sessions can expect to do, because, I think people who are in Black Lives Matter and other movements that protest should be concerned about what the Justice Department is going to look like. But the other thing that happened this week is that you had Donald Trump do a meeting with senators and once again make this false claim about voter fraud. He starts again saying, essentially, that in New Hampshire, he would have won New Hampshire had it not been for voter fraud. So talk a little bit about what it means in terms of the right to vote.
So note that these two segments of this segment have a little bit more commonality in that increasing the felony prosecutions of certain demographics that are unlikely to be Trump voters is yet another good way to effectively purge voter rolls, in addition to the so-called illegal immigration crackdown and the so-called millions of fraudulent votes that happened even in 2016.
His first, second, and third job is to purge the voter rolls of non-Trumpers, basically people of color. It's real simple. Donald Trump has laid this claim down that 3 million people swam the Rio Grande, illegal aliens, to vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, you might just think it's a big joke and that the guy's off his rocker and talking through his comb over. The thing is that Jeff Sessions is the guy who put in a bill to require voters to prove they're citizens. Now, you say, well, yeah, of course you should be a citizen to vote. Go ahead, prove you're a citizen. You have to have either naturalization papers, a passport, okay? How many homies have passports? How many Latinos just came back from their Alps vacation skiing with a passport or your original birth certificate? Go find that. Basically, Trump's supporter.
So note this is a lot like regressive taxation. What is the easiest and most convenient way to get registered and prove your citizenship? For those that have it, a passport. It's something you use maybe several times a year or at least every several years. If you have one, you probably know the drawer you keep it in. And then you can prove your citizenship and your eligibility to vote. Birth certificates, something we yank out of the drawer a lot less often, and that we're less likely to be sure we have. So effectively, if you've got the wherewithal or profession that causes international travel, then you've got a big leg up in getting registered to vote and not having to think about where you keep your birth certificate. Again, consistent with demographics that are more likely to be Trump voters.
Chris Kobach, who came up with this idea of proving your citizenship, knocked out almost every single voter in Kansas under the age of 30 who tried to register because they could not prove they were citizens. The courts overturned.
Look at that lower third. You see that near party line vote? That's Manchin in West Virginia, the father of the EpiPen CEO. He's the one who did vote for Sessions. That's the devil we have to deal with, but that's the reason we're within 2 of at least parity in the Senate. So what can you do?
The Kansas decision, Sessions is back. He's going to push with Trump a law, and he's going to prove that there are supposedly illegal aliens. And I saw this happen under George W. Bush, where David Iglesias and other federal prosecutors are told, go and arrest illegal aliens voting, and if you can't find any, and I'm not making this up, the federal prosecutor told me he was told by the White House then, find people, arrest them, you can let them go later.
And Judith, this is, I think, the sort of big red flag with Jeff Sessions, because he does have a long history of being for things like voter ID laws, the harshest possible measure to keep you from voting. What is the community and people such as yourself, the civil rights community, going to do about this?
Well, I mean, we're going to have to, first of all, be enforcing the Voting Rights Act ourselves, and we're going to have to litigate more. We also know that we're going to have to be watching them at every step and making sure that they are not overreaching and over-prosecuting people for fake voter fraud. I mean, look, Joy, this is a person who is no friend of voting rights or civil rights for that matter. This is a person who said that the Voting Rights Act was intrusive. This is a person who, when the Supreme Court struck down part of the Voting Rights Act, he said that was a win for the South, like he was a Confederate general. And so we will be watching him. We will be litigating. If we have to bring cases against the Department of Justice, we will have to do that. But at every inch, we have to protect voters, because now we know we have no friend at the Department of Justice.
I mean, to say that he's no friend to voter rights, I think is an understatement. I think the central constant focus of the guy's career has been suppressing the voice of minority and other non-mainstream demographic segments. That's Jeff Sessions' primary thrust. That's the reason he was denied judgeship when Reagan appointed him.
And if you recall Coretta Scott King's 1986 letter about Jeff Sessions when he was trying to become a federal judge, she accused him of using his awesome powers of his office when he was a prosecutor in Alabama in a shabby attempt to intimidate and frighten elderly black voters. And for this reprehensible conduct, he should not be rewarded with a federal judgeship. He has prosecuted civil rights workers for helping people register to vote.
Right. He's been part of this whole big voter fraud scam. It is just a cover. I call it the hysteria factory. They get hysterical about voter fraud, and then they come up with some solution. Donald Trump said, just repeated, that 1 million people are illegally registered in 2 states and voting twice.
Including his
Again,
kids.
Yeah, and well, the thing is, we don't find any of these double voters, but they removed, in this election, they removed in Republican states almost 1 million voters on these fake grounds of people voting twice. And now we're going to see this go into law.
I didn't know that. 1 million voters removed? I'm going to see if I can find more support for that story. But 1 million voters removed in only certain states. That's a big chunk of only certain states.
Basically, Jeff Sessions, when he was Attorney General of Alabama, he arrested civil rights workers on charges of voter fraud, and he grabbed elderly black people, put them on a bus, and sent them in a 400-mile round-trip session to making them testify before a grand jury. Pure voter intimidation aimed at voters of color.
Yep.
Worst Jim Crow tactics, and he's actually proud of that. He doesn't even say, gee, I'm sorry, that was another error. He's proud of it.
It's what he was there to do, and I think people should really look sharp because what he's there to do in Washington might not be so great for voters of color. Greg Powell, Judith Brown, Diana, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
And coming up next,